Thanks for tuning in to Watermark Equipment Tips. My name's Leif, and this week we're going over proportional chemical feed setups. We're going to do a deep dive on the application of residential drinking water. This chemical feed setup can be adapted to a variety of different applications, but let's do a deep dive on drinking water. So why would you want to use a chemical feed setup on your drinking water? Well, if you're pumping water out of your ground, for instance, you have varying qualities of groundwater. There's some groundwater which is good to drink as is, if it's gone through appropriate filtration and there's no microbial or pH concerns. You might just need to pump it out of the ground. But there's a lot of groundwater that requires some kind of remediation. Specifically where I live, our groundwater is extremely acidic. You might find a lot of iron in it as well. So it's important to treat that water so that it's a good enough condition to consume, and it's not going to cause damage to the piping or distribution system, even the appliances in your residence. So probably the two most common chemicals fed on the residential side would be soda ash. That's specifically for pH adjustment. Now, to properly adjust and figure out how much soda ash you need, you gotta factor in how much dissolved CO2 there is, what the alkalinity of the water is like, what your starting pH is, and there's a certain range where soda ash works phenomenally well. So that's the most widely used. There are some others out there. We're gonna focus on that. The other chemicals used for a completely different purpose, and that would be some kind of oxidant like chlorine. Chlorine's great to address any microbial concerns if you have water under the influence. It's also used to precipitate out certain dissolved, whether it's iron or just a mineral. You can often use chlorine or another chemical to get it to precipitate out a solution so it can then be filtered. So let's go over the pieces of equipment on how we set up a proportional feed, what their role is, and why the setup is what it is. So firstly, we have a water meter, specifically a contacting water meter. This one is 0.1 gallons per contact, or 10 contacts per gallon. So for every 0.1 gallons that goes through there, it gives one contact closure, which we would tie back to the chemical feed pump. There's a number of different multipliers you can get or contact outputs you can get. I like sizing it to where the meter itself would pulse at a max around 70 times in a minute. So on a typical residential well, you'll be seeing 7 gallons a minute coming through. This meter would then cap out at 70 contacts a minute. This particular pump can only run at 125 strokes in a minute. So we want to build in a little factor of safety there. If you've got a larger well with more output, you typically need a lower contacting meter and a larger head on your metering pump. So our water meter is driving our feed pump, and then our feed pump, we can adjust the stroke length of the pump. We can adjust our solution strength in our containment tank, or we can change how many times it strokes for every contact. So that's kind of our adjustability on the feed side. Defined quantity of processed water, known chemical concentration, and known volume output relative to the processed water. Processed water goes in, our chemical adjustment goes into the bottom of our static inline mixer. This then blends those two, so you get a pretty uniform output on the other side. Often a static inline mixer is enough. Occasionally, you will need some kind of contact tank if you need more time for, let's say, the chlorine to precipitate out iron. So just bear that in mind. Static inline mixers are great when they can be used. There are certain cases where you'll actually need a large contact time tank for our chemical to take effect. So that's proportional chemical feed in a nutshell. An important note is that it takes a trained specialist to really dial in this setup. When it comes to drinking water, you want to make sure that the amount of soda ash or the amount of chlorine that you're feeding is all calculated and dialed in. You're going to want someone taking a sample of your specific water and designing a complete setup to address any concerns with your household water. They'll dial in this system, and you're probably going to want them to come back periodically just to ensure that your groundwater quality hasn't changed and there aren't any adjustments that need to be on your setup. They'll often include softeners and other items that's essential to make sure that your drinking water, your showering water is at the best quality it can be at. Hope this week was helpful. Talk to you guys again soon. Thanks.